Good afternoon, everybody. I assume this microphone's on. Yes, you can all hear me. Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be back in Prague and to be at the WFC after a long time that we've not been able to meet in person. Mark gave a very eloquent sort of exposition of some of the challenges and indeed the requirements that CSDs face today. And I think it's interesting that 3 years ago, and probably 5 years ago, if that's when this conference was first originated, this panel, I think, would have been unthinkable. I don't think anyone would have thought of putting sustainability 3 or 5 years ago center stage at a WFC event, and certainly wouldn't put it as the first panel of the day. That in itself, to me, shows that the world is changing significantly. We used to talk about shareholder capitalism. That's what we were all brought up on when we did business school courses. Acting in the best interests of the shareholder, that's all that mattered. Well, not anymore. We now talk about stakeholder capitalism. We used to spend our time worrying about profitability. We probably still do. But what we now worry about as well is impact. What impact are we having on the wider world around us? And I think what we're transitioning to now is a new type of economy, which, if you like, is an impact economy. And if we've got an impact economy, we need to look at a lot of other factors and inputs rather than just standard operating profits, expenses, and return on equity. We have to look at ethics. We have to look at gender and diversity. We have to look at the environment, and we have to take a very close look at our governance and how we are delivering decisions within our own organizations. So how on earth do we actually manage this as a CSD? What's our role? Well, I've got an excellent panel here, and I'll ask them in a minute to introduce themselves very briefly. I'm also very pleased that this is a very ESG panel because it's extremely diverse. It's geographically diverse, it's ethnically diverse, and it's absolutely the right panel to discuss these issues. I think before I move on to the first Slido that I wanted to ask, and before I move on to the first question, I just wanted to give each of my panelists an opportunity of just introducing themselves very briefly to the audience, and then we'll move on to a Slido and the first question for the panel. So perhaps if I turn to my left, and Francesco.
Well, hello, yes, can you hear me? Well, thank you very much, Paul, for the very good introduction. Thank you very much to the WFC, EXDA, and CSD Prague for organizing this very good event. And very happy to participate as a first panel because we move on afterwards. But I think it's very important that we cover this topic as a first one. I work on Euroclear. I'm the managing director of the Spanish CSD, and I as well the responsible for the CSD operations within the SIX group, with the CSD of the Swiss market and the Spanish market. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Olga Cantillo. I'm the executive president of Latinex Group, which is a Latinex exchange, and the CSD in Panama. I'm also president of FIAB, the Ibero-American Federation of Exchanges, and I'm also a member of the executive committee of AXTA. Thank you to the WFC for the invitation, to the Prague CSD as well, and making me more beautiful and younger in the picture behind me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Paul, thanks for the introduction, and thanks Prague CSD for hosting this event, and thank you for all the organizers. It's really a diverse panel from almost all continents, so great job. And I'm representing AMX, the Armenian Securities Exchange. We also are the shareholders of the Armenian CSD, and I'm in the supervisory board of the Armenian CSD. And our shareholder recently has become the Warsaw Stock Exchange, the majority shareholder. So we are fresh in this industry, I would say, in the Europe, trying to enter to Europe.
Thank Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We want to appreciate the organizer of the conference and the invitation to be part of this panel. My name is Emmanuel, Alao. I work within a financial market infrastructure group in Nigeria called FMDQ Group. It's made up of an exchange, a CCP, and a depository. We also have a franchise for technology services and a private market. I'm the CEO of the depository. I also have some responsibilities in the IT space. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all and welcome to the panel. I wonder whether we could have the first question up on Slido, if possible. There's two questions that I'm going to ask you all to answer. Yeah, that's the right one. So in the next sort of 30 seconds or so, for ESG, what's the most important for CSDs and for the world? Which of these three letters is the thing that we should be really worried about and taking the most action on? So if you can just vote on that. Apologies, I have to look behind me. It's very inelegant. Oh, it's right in front of me. I can't see that one either. But anyway. Okay, that's really interesting. And it's interesting because I was at a conference, gosh, only about 6-9 months ago, where the same question was asked to a different audience, obviously. And what came back was environment, 90%, all the rest forget about. And that surprised me, because I think while the environment is absolutely vital, and we all have to look after it, in relation to CSDs, I think, and many financial market infrastructures, CCPs as well, there are other issues that we need to focus on. So we'll just keep that panel, or that Slido in mind as we go through the panel. And I'd like to move on to the first question. And what I'm going to do is divide the sustainability discussion into two. We're going to first discuss the things that CSDs can do themselves to become more sustainable, so if you like, inward-looking. And then we'll move on to the second question, which is about what we can do as CSDs to help the development of sustainable finance markets. So in relation to your own work as a CSD, corporates across the world are now having to look more closely at their impact on society and their impact on the environment. What pressures are you seeing locally in your own CSDs from regulators, clients, suppliers? How are you responding? And what are your priorities for the internal sustainability profile? And by all means, answer on behalf of your group as well as the individual entities that work for you. Francesco, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. I will kick off. Well, first of all, yes, an introduction, and you mentioned that it was very unlikely to have this kind of panel some years ago. I have to say that the transition to a more sustainable economy is something that is not something that passing fancy. On the contrary, it's something that will remain, and we have to take this as an opportunity. So more than pressures that we receive or we perceive, we have to be with our clients and take all these demands, these client demands that in reality there are necessities as an opportunity. As we as financial infrastructures need to give an action. So the first point is that no action is not an option. We have to move forward and be part of this change. And I think there is an opportunity for us to be a key player in all this topic, mainly because the landscape is not clear. There is a lot of regulation around. There is a lot of data with not the right quality to deal with these kind of topics. And I think that we, as a market infrastructures, need to take an active role in this. And basically, as well, I think it's an opportunity because all the change into a more sustainable economy will need a lot of money to be a reality. There will be a lot of finance needs to do this change. And we as a financial infrastructure are precisely this, facilitating the financing. So I think in my case, in the SIX group and as well BME, because you know BME has been part of SIX group since a couple of years ago, we perceive this as a real opportunity, and we have defined last year a very clear strategy around ESG topics that basically are around three main pillars. No? The first one is how SIX group can help as a financial market infrastructure. What kind of service and products around ESG the group can offer to our clients. And the third pillar is precisely how the SIX group can be, as a corporate citizen, can participate in these regards. No? So basically, as a financial infrastructure, the main role we can play is supporting our clients in all this transformation. And by clients, I mean not only the issuers or not only our participants, but as well final investors, stakeholders. As you mentioned, it's not around shareholders only; it's around stakeholders. So we have to impact in that respect. So, and in that respect, the SIX group have the beauty of being different business line that can help on this process to our clients. We have the exchanges, the fixed income, the equities, derivatives. We have as well the layer and the business line of post-trading with clearing and settlement and securities finance, and we have as well a business line dedicated for financial data. So with all these business lines, we are trying to support this change for our clients. Regarding the products, in concretely what can we offer, is not only about support clients, it's about offering them some concrete examples, concrete products. No? So we work as well around tools for helping the clients to navigate around all these topics that are on the table. And we as well issue concrete examples as a product. The most obvious one is the ESG indexes, for instance, no? On the fixed income, the green bonds, on the equity side, the indexes on ESG topics. And as well, creating platforms, mainly on the data field, to help the investors to look with more clarity and with more comparability all this data around ESG. And finally, the last pillar, that is the last but not least, because it's very important and probably justify all the above, is SIX as a corporate citizen itself. I mean, what SIX can be done around ESG? And it's a matter of coherence, let's say. I mean, we cannot help clients to move one direction if we are not doing exactly the same. And here, I would like to mention SIX as an employer, how we deal with our staff, with our people in terms of gender equality, in terms of integration, how we manage our daily business in front of our suppliers, for instance, or even if we comply with all the standards that we are now developing in front of our clients. So I know that, I mean, probably I see all the financial market infrastructures that will be key in this process of helping clients and stakeholders. Probably the CSDs will be not the full, we have not the full solution in our hands, but for sure I think we have a very important part of this solution. And in that respect, I think it's something that there is no option to avoid the front of it.
Thank you. I think it's interesting what you say about the need to be a good corporate citizen as a CSD to stand any chance at all of developing successful ESG or sustainable finance services. And it's a topic that I want to come back to, certainly within Euroclear, and I'm sure your other organizations as well. We found the pressure from clients, from suppliers, from regulators as well, from rating agencies, for us to be able to demonstrate and to prove how we have set up our sustainability work grows day by day. So I want to come back to that in a few minutes. Olga, if I can turn to you and Latinex, how have you been approaching this from a sort of corporate citizen perspective?
Yes, thank you. I would say that this journey that we started 5 years ago may be easier for CSDs that are integrated into a group with the exchanges, because It enables the group to work along with the ecosystem in a much easier way. But that doesn't mean that a standalone CSD cannot do it as well. It was Mark's word at the very end about collaboration, and that's what it's all about. In our case, we started off with corporate governance. You were asking about ESG. For us, it was like if we do not start from the top down, even though the initiative may have come from the bottom up, it's so important to have strong corporate governance in place. And in that sense, as a group, we're strongly committed to the development and the promotion of a sustainable but transparent as well capital markets. And in that sense, we have embedded sustainability across the board into our purpose, our strategy, our decision-making processes, and obviously our products and services. And this has been easier because our key stakeholders and our boards are very engaged in our sustainable strategy. And that obviously has taken some work from our side, but we have been able to do it so far. And it's also because we have been working into embedding sustainability from within. And the priorities you were mentioned, I would have to say that first is walk the talk, like Francisco was saying as well. For us, it was not about, for example, as an exchange, we want to make sure that there's no greenwashing from our listed companies. So how do we do not add to greenwashing itself? Because we want to have strong policies in place. So in that sense, that's something that we have promoted from within. We have a corporate sustainability policy in place, and that helps us work on the corporate culture of sustainability within the corporation itself. We have policies in place for our employees that promote gender equality, gender violence prevention, inclusion, diversity, paid paternity leave. And these things may sound like soft skills in a sense, because we're a business, but it helps. The feeling of engagement from the employees makes this very easy. So that we found as well. The other thing that for us was key is from the very beginning, having best practices and standards in place. And in that sense, we became the first exchange from the Latin and Caribbean region to become members of the Climate Bonds Initiatives. We also became members of the SSC initiative. And that was very key because it provided us with guidelines of how to embed sustainability within not only the exchange and the CSD, but the ecosystem as well. And that helped a lot, and becoming signatories of Women Empowerment Principles, TCFD, being part of the World Federation of Exchanges that has principles by itself, and also FIAB, amongst others. And having the collaboration as well from, and joining forces, because this is also very key. We can't do it by ourselves, and understanding that we needed to join forces with the public and the private sector, be very active in a working group that we have in Panama for the financial center, where our objective is to have a sustainable financial center, has also working with peer market infrastructures. Just as an example, I was in Madrid last week, and we met with Bolsas de Mercados Españoles, and just learning from exchanges and CSDs that are ahead of us helps us like shorten the learning curve, because we need to speed up the pace. And in that sense, that has also been very important for us. As for the market, what we have provided is guidance for the issuance of ESG securities with the CBI, the Climate Bonds Initiative standards and principles. And this was key to us because we want common language standards in our market. And if we want to have investors and interested listed companies or new companies that come to the market, to be able to come with these standards was for us very key. Having voluntary disclosure reporting from the listed companies and us ourselves is also important. So we provided the market with information as far as GRI standards and SASB standards for this kind of reporting, and we do the reporting ourselves. We're reporting for the second year in a row as well. So that was also key for us. As for pressure, again, I just mentioned common language. That is a big pressure that we have. I like to say standardizing the standards. Why? Because there's so many standards out there. There's so many principles out there that are so confusing for companies who want to contribute in a way for the financing or capital raising of their projects or the transitioning for sustainability. I'm sorry. So that is key. And for investors, having to have an investment portfolio or policies in place and not knowing which standard to follow makes it crazy, because there's no way to do benchmarking or knowing if you're really doing an impact and responsible investment. So for that's very key, a key pressure that we have. And the other thing, and I liked the way Mark said it, plumbing. The other thing is the plumbing, because having not only individual but a common place for database is so key to be able for listed companies to compare themselves to their peers and learn and know what to do, but also for investors if they want to invest in some type of project, because their sustainability strategy requires them to do green or to do blue, for example, to have blue investments. How can they, or where can they go to have this information? So having individual and reliable, publicly available data, not only from listed companies, but from market infrastructures, and then from regulators themselves is key. And I think that's a really big pressure that we have, and this is where I see the CSD opportunity coming in place, and we're going to talk about that later on.
Thanks, Olga. I think it's interesting you started by picking up exactly what was shown on the Slido score, that governance is so important. I think whether we're talking about internal sustainability of a CSD or what it can do for the market externally, that only works if you have a board governance structure and a management structure top-down that supports it. I think the danger of ESG initiatives bottom up is it becomes incredibly fragmented, and I think it's a topic that boards are now expected to take oversight of and to have experience and expertise in. So I'm glad you focused on the governance point. It's certainly what we found within the Euroclear group. Hayk, over to you. How are you dealing with these internal challenges of ESG?
Well, just to introduce, Armenia is in between Europe and Asia, so it's developing. I wouldn't say that we have that much pressure yet from the regulator, but in general, I would start with the external. We treat it as an opportunity for ourselves, because we realized for business development, opening up new links, new lines, new counterparty relationships, attracting foreign investors, speaking to the banks to buy the bonds that keep in our custody. It's very important to mention that you are trying and thriving for being ESG compliant company. And it's creating an opportunity, basically. So if you speak to someone and you are on the same level, or you tick this extra box, it's a good business opportunity. It helps better. It helps more to build up business relationships. So this is one of the examples of how we're trying to utilize this ESG topic theme in general. So we're trying to be ahead from the local market requirements and trying to be one of the examples of how ESG can help the Armenian companies in general. So for example, we recently, like a few years ago, we joined this Ring the Bell for Gender Equality initiative organized by UN. I wouldn't say that was very serious a few years ago. We didn't take it that seriously. It was just tick the box again. It's nothing cool. You get lots of attention from neighboring countries as well. But throughout this last 2-3 years, we realized that we can utilize it as an opportunity as well, because we as a CSD, we are not only for listed securities, we are the custodian of all joint stock companies, whether listed or not listed in the Armenian economy. So we keep the registry of all joint stock companies. So basically we have access to the whole economy in a way. They're all our clients. And what we started to do, we started to encourage all our clients who keep the registry within the depository to come and join this Ring the Bell for Gender Equality. And we started to promote everywhere, for example, that our employees, we are 65% women employees working in AMX. And we started to encourage all the companies who have majority women employees to come to join the initiative, and started to encourage those who don't have women as a majority to try to think about it and to also join this initiative. So last year we did a huge event for the Ring the Bell. We invited most of the companies, major companies in Armenia, from Georgia, and even the state officials. By default, we created a closed members club, I would say, through this initiative, through this event even, which is, again, it's just a business development opportunity for us. Why not to use it? So this ESG, where in some parts of the world it's like a pressure, people feel it as a pressure, whereas in our case it's an opportunity, basically. And it's great for developing countries to be ESG compliant, because at the end of the day, the capital markets, we are all relying upon each other cross-border. So you need to be compliant with your counterparties as well. So this is the external part of ESG. Well, internally, for us, the governance is the most important things. Governance within our company, starting from, we just did the restructuring after this change of shareholder, which happened last year. So we started to implement new structures, supervisory board committees, management board separated with different functions, so that we can demonstrate that we are trying to minimize all the possible risks. And we started to pay more attention on the corporate governance of the companies that we are servicing for registry keeping. And so our clients started to feel a pressure from us, actually, not even from the regulator, that they need to be compliant to best practices of corporate governance. And then we went a little bit further, and we started to implement these learning and development programs for our employees, because it's all about learning and development when it starts. Well, most of the people in Armenia didn't know what is an ESG even. I mean, why is it important? So we started to kind of organize events, not very strict lectures, but kind of informal, just to make people feel the responsibility towards the future generations. So how do you affect, if you don't do anything, the negative effect that by doing nothing, you really have a negative effect? And what value will you be creating if you start to live more responsibly and trying to identify the targets on your daily routine lifetime, life kind of routine. And then, at last, how you can implement these identified targets in routine work, daily work. And now we have this kind of initiative that we encourage all employees to come up with ideas about automation of all the processes. And more we encourage, more ideas we receive, and we realize that now we don't have that many administrators of the softwares, because most of the things have been automated. Rather, we have more business developers, idea generators, business analysts who try to implement all these new ideas and to automate the processes, to make things faster, transactions faster, more secure, with more checks and controls in place. And for example, recently what we introduced an online application which makes CSD retailable. So in Armenia, basically, every citizen, whoever is a shareholder of any private company, ultimately should have an account in the CSD to keep his shares. And we used to, but we still operate the business model through operators, so it's a cascade layer, so we are the centralized one, and we have the investment banks and investment companies being the operators of the CSD, so it's like a three-party agreement. So the clients used to go to the bank, open the account, place the orders in the bank through the paper or through telephone. So we introduced this application where clients don't need to go to the banks anymore. They can just log in and check their account in the CSD. We expanded it further. We are now enabling people to make DVPs, FOPs, and then what we introduced, we realized that actually there is a problem with the shareholders meeting, because you can have shareholders from Australia to California in an Armenian company. So we introduced the electronic voting system, and we are now encouraging all the companies in Armenia to use our electronic voting for conducting their shareholders meeting. And sooner or later, it won't be an encouraging move, it will be a demand, basically. They won't have any other choice, which means saving lots of papers, saving lots of time, electricity, energy, etc. And you just go online, you check the agenda, you make your decision online. And it's risk-free because we keep the registry and we know who is the shareholder and we have the direct access to them. And this is one of the best examples kind of how to go towards more kind of responsible CSD.
Thank you. I think it's interesting how you've interpreted governance, because I think you've given a very good example of how it's not just about how good the internal governance of a CSD or a stock exchange group is. It's actually about how we can develop services which improve the governance for our clients and for their shareholders and issuers as well. So I think it's an interesting way you've looked at it. I'm conscious of the time. We need to get on to the second question as well. But Emmanuel, talk us a bit about what's going on in Nigeria and how you're approaching the complexities of ESG.
Okay, I'll try and make it short so that you can save a bit of time. So we've looked at, I'll take it from the perspective of external drivers and pressures, and internal what we have done internally to encourage ourselves to do very well. The Securities and Exchange Commission in Nigeria published a guideline on financial sustainability, which all capital market operators are meant to look at. It's not enforced, but you're supposed to try as much as possible to align with it. We've taken that on board fully. It became operational last year, September, and it will be part of what we're going to do with our annual report this year. Secondly, Nigeria is a developing country, and therefore the development financial institutions are supporting the raising of green bonds and all of that, because they can come to market with lower interest rate funding, which is a very big encouragement for issuers to get involved with it. So that's a driver. It's more of an opportunity for us because we want that business, and we want our clients, our issuers, to be able to leverage it. So we have to provide the right services to support sustainability financial services and products. Internally, what we've done is to develop a very robust strategy around sustainability. We looked at the 4 pillars. We looked at we selected 6 priority SDGs, and we have 10 initiatives that we're basically running with right now, okay, that we're implementing internally. But secondly, we also have partnerships with other entities. For instance, we have market development initiatives, what we call Nigerian Green Bond Market Development Initiative. We have a partnership with an entity that is supported by the UK, funded by the UK government, and that is meant to build capacity within the country for issuers to understand what sustainability is, so that they can define their projects right, they can provide the right data and information about their projects, and therefore they can find the right funding and the right investors. That initiative also supports building awareness within the whole community to ensure that people understand what sustainability is, and they should be able to engage with it. We also have another partnership with Luxembourg Stock Exchange, for instance. Again, to gain technical insight into what they do, and also to help with dual listing of securities so that we can ensure issuers can take advantage of a larger liquidity pool outside Nigeria. Thirdly, we also look at collaborations with other people. Part of collaboration is being part of working group of industry associations. We have a number of that we're part of, and we're actually contributing to developing strategies and knowledge and standardization stuff to ensure that sustainability take hold in our space. Lastly, because we need to shape behavior internally, behavior of staff, to ensure we encourage creativity along these lines, to ensure that everything everyone does is in line with sustainability principles, and ensures that our governance structure also incorporates all of that. By the way, the strategy is supported by the board, and therefore board has visibility of what we're doing, and we make reports on that on a quarterly basis. We're developing KPIs that is going to get cascaded into goals that will go into people's appraisals, and therefore there's no way you can shape staff behavior if you don't put something on their head to ensure they behave and they do what you want them to do. Now that's not sounding negative; it's just to encourage. Again, I look at it as incentivization. Okay, you got to incentivize people to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think you touched on a really important issue with this, which is how does the external world, how do our suppliers and clients actually know what we're doing in the sustainability space? How do they know how diverse we are, how inclusive we are, how our carbon profile is reducing? And all that requires us to produce data and KPIs that are public. And I think the fact you mentioned KPIs are vitally important. I want to move on now a bit more and dig a little bit deeper in the remaining minutes into the sort of world of sustainable finance and what actually CSDs can do. As we've heard, there's a huge demand from investors for green or sustainable products. There's a huge demand, obviously, from governments and companies to issue securities to finance green and sustainable projects. And most of you will be well aware that the race to net zero by 2050 probably requires somewhere in around about $50 trillion of financing in order to get the whole globe to a net zero carbon position by 2050. I mean, that's an awful lot of securities to issue, and therefore, prima facie looks like pretty good news for CSDs because it's more things that we can settle and provide asset servicing around. I just thought before we move on to the question about what CSDs can do and what the CSDs are actually doing in the sustainable finance space, if we could just quickly have the second Slido, which was an incredibly simple question with I think only 3 answers. I mean, are there things we can do? Is this a business we should get into, or should we just be the passive recipient of the securities that are issued? Just quickly vote and we'll see what you think. I'm really glad it said that. Otherwise, we might have to have closed the panel about 15 minutes early. I think there's clearly a role for us. I think the questions that I'd like to ask the panel, and we'll go in reverse order this time, is, what is it precisely you think we can do? Should we be identifying within our systems green and sustainable securities? Should we be providing, a label? Maybe you already do. Should we be looking more at data flows between issuers and investors? And Olga, you mentioned the huge number of standards around ESG, the huge amount of data, the disparity between the way in which ESG rating agencies look at companies. Is there something we can do to provide information flows like we do with corporate actions? Or are there other things that we should be doing? So, Emmanuel, I'd like to start with you. Can you just deep dive a bit as to how you view your role in the sustainable finance world?
Thank you again. I think the answer is yes to all the points you raised. We absolutely have, as CSD, we have a role to play. And we need to support, let me put it this way. ESG data should be at par with financial information, price discovery at the exchanges when people want to trade. You need to be able to see that the security you're trying to trade or you're trying to get involved with actually meets your sustainability criteria. There needs to be standardization about what information we're going to display. And CSDs have a role to play in ensuring that information will get fed into the front end for trading. We need to ensure that that information is in the pre-trade state and also in post-trade. Because you don't need to only have exchange-traded transactions. You can have OTCs and you can have transfers and stuff like that that happens at the depository. So that information has to be pervasive, and people need to know exactly what you're doing. Secondly, if investors, either institutional investors or private, when they are interacting with their portfolio on their securities account, they need to understand the composition of that portfolio, not just in terms of asset types or the valuation of the portfolio, but they need to know the sustainability data around it, how compliant they are. And different investors will have different criteria. Again, this is where standardization comes in, and everybody needs to work together very closely. Again, on data flows, I also support that. We have institutional investors coming to Nigeria, for instance, foreign institutional investors. They come in through global custodians, they have relation with the local custodians, and they come to us. The point is, either foreign or local, can we ensure that sustainability-related data flows across that network as transactions are being executed, as things are being settled, as assets are being moved around? Again, it requires a lot of collaboration, it requires a lot of work on our technology systems and platforms and integration interfaces, but also on secure messaging. So it cuts across everything from my point of view. So it's crucial that we don't see it as some exotic stuff that is just out there, but something that needs to be built into our day-to-day activities, our processes, our technology systems, and we have, I think, a very supportive role to play. We can't do it alone, but we're a crucial plug in a well. Thank you.
Thanks. I think the flows of information are important because, of course, in a sustainable world with green or sustainable debt, obviously the information attached to that is changing constantly as projects evolve. So that, this is not static data. This is data that moves every 6 months, every 12 months, and has an impact on price. So I think you're very right. Hayk, what about Armenia? How are you looking at this, particularly from a, facilitating sustainable finance in Armenia and in surrounding countries?
Well, sustainable finance is better, it's cheaper from the point of view of the issuer. Definitely, we are trying to encourage everybody to go and issue green bonds. We had few success cases which were listed, and this is on a general level. But in the CSD level, it all comes down to the importance of the priorities. So how do we prioritize ESG and its implementation? Now, we shouldn't forget that CSDs sometimes have monopoly powers, and if they want to adopt ESG cross-country, they can make it obligatory. I don't think we will ever have a data collection problem because you can simply enforce the reporting to your issuers, for example. Otherwise, you won't provide them the service. But I don't think we should be strict from day one, that strict. And instead, we should take the approach of encouragement and rewarding so that, for example, their fees will be less or will open up new doors for their businesses, will engage these issuers, these papers into new communities. And the cross-border issue which was raised, it's actually an issue, it's a concern, but I do think there is a solution for it because we are all using the same database for ISINs. It's an ANNA database. So if ANNA adopts new metrics applied to each ISIN, for example, you can have next to the ISIN a rating. You can have an icon, I don't know, you can have a number which can be integrated into Swift message, for example. And for each transaction, the Swift, you just add up a new line, and it's the assessment of the paper. This is also a doable thing. But it all, again, depends how important is ESG for each CSD and for the country in general. For us, it's really important because it's a source for more revenue, as simple as it is. And if we can make more revenue, and then it's much better for us. And it's a source for new clients. Again, this is great. It's an opportunity for us to be the only one and stay the only one, because if we create a new club of companies within us, together with us, they stay with you for much longer and maybe forever, as long as you keep them entertained and you keep them kind of, well, you cannot entertain a business without showing a benefit. So it's simple as it is. It's an opportunity. It's good. In general, it comes down to personal kind of consciousness of each person. How do you feel towards the next generations? What do you want to leave for the future? Simple as it is. You don't want next generations to curse you. Instead, you want them to remember you in a well manner, kind of.
I think your comment about cooperation is important because the irony, of course, with ESG data is it's data that most of us don't have. So we have to get it from somewhere, from a stock exchange, from a rating agency, from ANA or whatever. So cooperation is clearly the only way that this model works. Olga, in Panama, talk us through some of the products that you're thinking about.
Yes, I'm going to try to avoid repeating what Emmanuel mentioned because I could not agree more with what you said. And you were mentioning 50 trillion euros.
50 trillion
Net zero.
shortfall.
Yeah, but then there's a huge increase in what's social and sustainable securities as well. And then you have the sustainability linked bonds, which is not for a specific project, but for helping companies throughout the transition of sustainability. So just imagine what this is going to be. Most of us, if not all, are nonprofit organizations. So we need to do business at the end of the day, right? Because it's what really drives us. We are here to be transparent and advocate for sustainability, not only show net income to our shareholders, but also be responsible and make positive impact within our society and our planet as well. And CSDs play a key role. Again, I mentioned earlier the data access, and both the panelists have already mentioned that, and that's where I see it. CSDs can provide more services than exchanges can. And then you have the pre-listing, you have the listing in the exchanges with the information of a compliant or non-compliant company. You can have a self-verified or guaranteed issuer that says that they're compliant with ESG, but not necessarily. So you have third parties verifying, giving a second-party opinion on the securities, and then come in the CSD, all the post-trading, all the information on the corporate actions, on the securities themselves, on what the reporting they're doing, along with the exchanges, but you can be or we, I should say, I don't know why I said you can be, we can be that third-party provider who's like external from the issuer. We do not regulate them, well, I mean, they're part of the ecosystem, but we have that data. So having that data, being able in one common place to provide that data to the investors, to the issuers, to the verifier, the second-party opinion, and even the regulators can be of not only a good business, but a good, in a way, what we're giving back to society and the planet, as well as doing business. And that's where I see that we come in as CSDs.
And I think being a trusted financial market infrastructure helps in terms of a reliable source of that data. I think our regulatory structure probably helps us in this opportunity. Francisco, last but by no means least, do you want to comment on the Spanish and the Swiss view of the world?
Yeah, I will come with some concrete examples because I agree totally with you, and data will be probably one of the most important parts where we can include value in all of this. I think this data management depends very much as well on the regulation. I mean, once the regulation will be clear, when the standards will be implemented and clear in that respect, I think we will be there because CSDs are very accustomed to deal with regulation and standards by far. So, I mean, if there is something else that we can do, I'm sure that we will. But I would like to put on the table two examples of concrete products that we are offering and that has have an ESG component. No? The first one is the proxy voting, the management of the general meeting. This was a service that we as CSD did not provide before, and we implement in Euroclear in Spain a product that helps to connect in a digital manner the issuers, the financial intermediaries, and the investors, which clearly has a governance component very strong because we establish this additional link for issuers to communicate with the stakeholders and shareholders. But as well, it has an environment component because we do the process more efficient. And basically, the process in Spain, and I think it's everywhere the same, now is very much paper used. So we avoid to use all these papers regarding information back and forward. So it has a very important impact in terms of environment as well. And a second example, for instance, that we have managing as well in Euroclear, the Spanish CSD, and not since a couple of years, because we started with this in 2005, is that we manage the national registry of greenhouse gas emission allowances. This is the mandatory market of carbon credits in Europe, managed by the European Commission. And in the case of Spain, the ministry outsourced its service to Euroclear because at the end of the day, it is a registry. So it's very close to our core activity about custody, about registration, about accounting credits and debits in positions. So in fact, although it came from 2005, it has a very environmental impact, being the ones who are managing this kind of registry in the Spanish market for the ministry. So these are just a couple of examples that are not related with data. So for sure data will be very important, and for sure we will have to plan and to do more around data. But these are two examples about how can we as CSD impact the society and help our clients, and in general the acknowledgement of these ESG components.
Thank you. I'm conscious the clock is ticking down on this really excellent dialogue on ESG. I think I just wanted to ask sort of one final question, and you don't all have to answer, any of you can just jump in, which is that it's very clear from what you're saying, there's huge numbers of opportunities for CSDs in this space over the next 5-10 years. So if you're looking ahead over 10 years in one or two lines only, how do you think your CSD will be positioned? What's your vision for ESG in your local market from a CSD perspective in 10 years' time? What does success look like in this space? Does anyone, I won't ask all of you, anyone want to pick that question up?
I would say to keep moving the needle in collaboration with the stakeholders of our market, obviously being the data provider that I've been mentioning for the market as well, and why not even for the region. I think we can be able to do that and provide that, and achieving our sustainability strategy and having more commitment from the financial ecosystem, both also on the private sector and the public sector as well.
Anyone else want to comment on sort of 10-year vision of what success looks like?
Okay, in 10 years, I will expect that the company I work for will be fully embedded, will have ESG fully embedded in its corporate practices, operational practices, risk management practices, and administration, facilities and all of that. It cuts across board so that we reduce the carbon footprint. But secondly, we need to ensure we fully support the community to ensure that this is more difficult than implementing a new accounting standard because it goes beyond finance. It goes into communities, it goes into waste management, it goes to all kinds of stuff. And reporting on it is also difficult because some of these industries that have never been regulated, like a financial system, have been regulated. So it's a lot of work, and I think there has to be commitment from everyone. It has to be focused agenda that is tracked and measured and rewarded. And I will expect that my company will be at least in my own market, will be at the forefront of that, thought leading, driving the change, and ensuring that we fully adopt ESG in its entirety, not just in the financial data component, but in its entirety into the operations that we run and the financial in the products and services that we offer as well.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to add anything, or will you?
I would like to add one point,
Please.
Which has not been mentioned, and I think it's very important to keep in mind as well, that this technology. I mean, we, in our core business, we are now investigating different options with different technologies, and it's a very interesting topic, and probably tomorrow we will be more in detail with the panels, but this technology will and must be used as well for ESG topics within the CSDs. So it's not a matter of just thinking how we do things today, it's how, or what has the potential this technology give us to do more around ESG in the future.
Thank you. Look, time to call this panel to a close. I mean, thank you to my panelists for providing a huge amount of insight into this relatively new but extremely important topic. I think we should all be very reassured. It seems to me that the CSDs are taking this extremely seriously, already have an extremely sustainable mindset, and I think the environment and society is in pretty good hands, given what my colleagues have told me about their plans and processes. So on that note, I'd thank you all greatly for your contributions. I very much enjoyed moderating the panel, and I'll pass over to Anna, and I wish you a very enjoyable and, of course, sustainable next 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you.